which gives them potentially $1.1 million that they can make. Unbelievable number, extremely high terms. WNBA Players Association turned it down. They said there's more money that's on the table, and this is unbelievable. We're going to talk about that and more today on the Money Mike Syndicated Radio podcast. Folks, I'll tell you this. You normally, in a negotiation, and when one party takes it public, as this goes back to Gumagay Project B and whatever Project B is doing, fantastic. But the WNBA owners have literally said, here's the deal. You can make up to $1.1 million if you're good as you say you are, and you can do what you say you're going to do. Now, at the end of the day, I always told you from day one with Money Mike, the CaitlinClark blueprint is the master plan of the league. And they're not looking for individuals or paying players. And a lot of people have looked at this a lot of different ways of how they're going to be able to explain what's going on, what are the owners offering. And it really comes back as you look at it. You look at AP, you know, AP News, they put out a report and they said, here's the deal. The proposal can get you a salary of a max salary of over $1.1 million. And really, they're saying you can reach that number with incentives, right? That you're going to be able to stack up, which means, say a player like A'ja Wilson's the MVP of the WNBA. Well, A'ja Wilson's going to make $1.1 million when A'ja Wilson was making $250,000. Now, when you dig deeper and you look at this, and you look again, as I've always said with the CaitlinClark business model, you're going to be in a different situation because her revenue top end is so high, and now it looks like the players in the players union were basically negotiating for themselves, because these players, I mean, you got Gumagay 13 years, you got Collier's getting there. I mean, there's nowhere for them to go. Right? So the WNBA is really looking at a plan that says, hey, Mike, I'm looking at all the rookie players coming in. Those are my target markets. And those are the players I want to collaborate with. Those are the players that actually are going to make me the most money. And now, Mike, I want to offer an incentive package. I'm raising the base from $68,000 to $220,000. I'm going to give you a max salary of $850,000. And why am I going over these numbers again, which are public numbers, everybody knows, is the fact that now that you do know the numbers, the WNBA Players Union, okay, is in a pickle. And they're in a pickle because they wanted to do something. They thought they could get public opinion, and now they've lost public opinion. So now they're coming back and saying, well, I don't like the offer. I want revenue sharing. I want revenue sharing. Well, here's the problem with that. And this is where I go back, and I really want to share this, because you'll hear me talk about COGS, which is cost of goods sold, right? And that's where Gumagay goes back to the product. Who's the product? And what's the product and what can it do? And when I go over the cost of goods sold, I want you to understand exactly what I mean. Because here's the deal, folks. The cost of goods sold are the actual product. That's the players. Here's the problem Money Mike's ran into time and time again, is when you have those players and you're going to get their cost of goods sold, well, your cost is so low because the WNBA, here's the numbers, folks, and this is where you got to go dilute, and you go back to Catherine Engelbert because her firm ran the numbers. Now, the WNBA Players Association doesn't have to speculate or guess, and here's where I think they may have missed the boat. Kathy's firm said, look, here's the deal. The WNBA is going to make about $1 billion in revenue, okay? But Duluth also said that the entire women's sports is going to make about $2.5 billion, right? Now, they're both working off of this number, okay? So that's the number they're going. Now, the Players Association is saying, no, you're not showing us the other numbers, and the WNBA owners are really saying this to you. And folks, I want everybody to put an owner's hat on with Money Mike. Because, I got my grandson, he loves to play a game called Beyblade. And he says, let it rip, Papa, let it rip. I'm going to let it rip a little bit, right? So you got to be able to have cost justification here. And the WNBA Players Association, okay, when you got the loot that's run the numbers, is given the valuations in this environment of negotiation, the players union should have a firm that's bringing these numbers and saying, no, here's what you're going to make, right? Because you should be able to tell the NBA owners their business. And that, folks, that's across the board in any negotiation, whether you're doing a merger or an acquisition. I mean, you're going to be able to get the numbers to determine what the projected earnings of revenue are. Now, here's the problem. It goes right back to where Money Mike told you it was going. And man, oh man, I'm going to tell you this, and I want to tell you straight to the point, because a lot of people are asking these questions, and I want to make sure I address the questions, because they're like, well, wait a minute, how come we're not reaching a balance here of how come this negotiation is not moving forward? Well, because the owners do not want to pay for players that are not going to generate revenue for the league. And those, okay, you get into a personalized managed agreement, which the owners are saying, look, here's the deal. We're going to pay you guys more money, right? Folks, I'm searching it up here. We're going to pay you guys more money. We're not paying you guys more money for Project B. That's Project B's problem, right? Because at the end of the day, if we're paying you more money, then here's what's got to happen. You've got to be dedicated to what we do here. You've got to be dedicated to the facility, the training, the rehab, because we're not going to take an injured player that's coming back from another league. And this is where I have concern with Unrivaled, right? Because at the end of the day, you can have Unrivaled there, but with Unrivaled, you must understand that Unrivaled plays and then the WNBA plays, and the players can't play 100 games. I don't know where you're going. And today, the WNBA today, folks, when you look at it, they play a 44-game schedule today. They're in an expansion mode by 2030. That 44-game schedule can go to 66 games. And if that does happen, the league is going to play in a longer period of time. And I don't know why anybody doesn't see this, right? So when you do play in a longer period of time, here's what you do get. You're going to get more generated revenue, but you can only generate that revenue with the players that are going to generate it. And that's what takes me back to CaitlinClark, right? You get CaitlinClark generating the league revenue, all right? Project B players, how much revenue are the Project B players who are signing generating the league? Because that doesn't work for me. And when you put your owner's hat on, and I'm spending $325 million and I just increased your salary, it's going to be a take it or leave it. I mean, really, because at the end of the day, what did Money Mike tell you? I tell you, every player's worth $1 million. That was a couple years ago. Now the figure's $1.5, $2 million. But the real number, the WNBA and the Players Association, is how do I get to a $5 million max contract? What incentives can you give me that will allow me to get to $5 million? Right? That's the number one deal. But you can't do that because Project B floated $2 million. So now you lost the top edge, right? And no player, WNBA, and this is why I tell you folks, you got ESPN, and ESPN is really going through a reform, right? You got Stephen A. Smith is getting worked out of ESPN right now. And this is such an industry trigger because you got all the analysts who work for ESPN that work for Disney, right? But Disney is the sponsor of the WNBA, and here they're bad-mouthing and they're going over here celebrating on Project B, right? It doesn't fly. You can't be an owner, have your owner hat on and say, I'm going to pay you a max contract for you to go over there and celebrate another league. No, that league needs to take care of you. And here's the deal with platforms. I'm telling you about the CaitlinClark platform. And that platform is an easy platform to understand, folks, because she sells everything. CaitlinClark sells everything. There's nothing that CaitlinClark doesn't sell, right? And so that's not the problem. The problem is the players don't know the projected revenue that the WNBA owners are going to make. And I'm not going to give you, the WNBA owners, I'm not giving you my day-to-day operations. I'm just not going to do it, right? And so now you're stuck because here's what you got to understand, folks. and I really want to make it as layman term as I can, right? Cost of goods sold. It's called COGS. It's every corporate environment, no matter what product service you're in, you're going to have to determine a value. What does that mean? In a really, really layman terms, it's a direct cost a company incurs to produce or acquire the goods it sells, right? The players. And it includes raw materials, raw players, trainer, build them up, marketing, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead. Calculating COGS is a crucial determinant of a company's gross profit. This is where the owners are saying, look, I give you more money, I give you revenue share, you're going to cut into my profit. I can't do that. And it subtracts directly from the revenue to show how much profit is left before the operating expenses. Folks, I want you to hang on to that, right? How much cost is left after the operating expenses? Folks, the players are a very small piece of the WNBA. Everybody thinks they're the major piece. They're not. It's the raw talent and the operations that you have to staff a league that can go and expand to 24 teams. This is the issue because the administration costs it's horrendous. And to get to this stage where now the players who have got to understand this is about name, image, and likeness. Kathy Engelbert does not have a contract, folks. Let me explain this to you in another way. Because people are trying to determine what Kathy is going to do. Kathy's going to close this deal, and you can get whoever you want to ride out on this deal. But Kathy's got the WNBA valuation of revenue. In 2023, the WNBA made about $700 revenue. 2022, they get another $200 million from the TV contract. The revenues this year are about $1 billion from all the gate receipts, and maybe even a little bit higher because there's other platforms that the WNBA makes money on, right? And the NBA makes money on other platforms. So it's really, the game is not how many viewership you get, folks. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We're talking corporate enterprise business. We're talking CBA negotiation. We're talking what actually has happened and why are we at this point, and did the players union come unprepared to negotiate at the table? And that's what's really going on, okay, is you're giving a max salary where I've increased it. Kelsey Mitchell, Indiana Fever made $260,000. Now you make $850,000, right? We're up to $1 million. So with Kelsey Mitchell's season, Kelsey Mitchell is knocking on $1 million, right? She made $250,000. That's 4 times in public knowledge, right? So you got to look at that, and people are going, more money. And they realize CC, you look at it, you got Lopez, Joe Lopez. CC is the GOAT of women's sports, right? Guys, I'm trying to tell everybody in the WNBA, and here's where Money Mike is. Money Mike doesn't see color. I don't care if Caitlin White is purple, right? The CaitlinClark that came into the WNBA gravitated to the fans, and the fans have been willing to spend money and follow her. They're willing to tag up their motorhomes, right? Because people don't understand the Big Ten. They don't have a clue outside of the Big Ten of how you tag up your motorhomes, you travel, you go see the football playing. And really, that's what they've done is with CaitlinClark. They're willing to satch it up. We're going to make CaitlinClark a vacation, right? So if the WNBA owners understand they want to make CaitlinClark a vacation, how do I get another player just like that so I can make a vacation? Well, the name is Juju Watkins, right? So Juju Watkins is not going to reinvent the wheel, folks. Juju Watkins just comes under the umbrella of Caitlin, who's already here, and everybody's in negotiations, and she makes revenue right now the minute she walks into the league, right? I don't care if Juju Watkins is green, purple, orange, black, red. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is she's the player that can move the needle. And when you get into this environment now, because you're talking about name, image, and likeness. So what the players union is negotiating for today, the players coming in the league already have. So they are not going to freak out if I'm not on the WNBA platform. These players will, because they don't have anything if they're off the platform and they didn't do the due diligence. You got Kathy Engelbert, Duluth, comes up, gives the valuation $1 billion, what they're going to make. Here's their projected revenue. What does the entire women's sports make? $2.5 billion, right? So you got to look at that number and say, oh, okay, so now you're going to get back to your COGS, which is the cost of goods sold. That's the player. And really, at the end of the day, the cost of goods sold is too low, right? And the WNBA players were working on minimum wage, but now it doesn't matter because the players who are playing in Project B will not get max contracts. They just will not get max contracts. They've done everything. It's just like Alyssa Thomas said, the fans are racist. Okay, Money Mike is like, what are you doing? But she doesn't understand you come from Phoenix, where the NBA had to pull an all-star game out of Phoenix because they didn't want to have Martin Luther King Day. See, a lot of people are doing things they shouldn't do, and a lot of negotiations have come here, and they've negotiated too low. Now that you negotiated too low, and you do not have the projections, and what did I tell you? Being in an environment of AT&T and dealing with CEOs, you'll deal with John Stanky. I mean, you got Bezos' Amazon, I got Iger over there at Disney. It doesn't matter who it is, and that's why I just was shocked at Stephen A. Smith. And folks, I'm gonna go a little bit, I'll close up here, but Stephen A. Smith, just getting on there, you know, the funny thing about it, I mean, CaitlinClark is like Serena Williams, really, folks. I mean, you gotta look at it. Serena came into tennis, and man, they were good. The Williams sisters were good. I mean, it went down to the beads in their hair, and they said, we don't care, we from Compton. But they could compete. They got on there, they took it, they took whatever abuse came their way, their mother, their father, they backed them up, and what did they do? They changed the game of tennis, right? But they had to go through the fire, right? And they had to build a marketing plan to get them where they are, and they had to turn down contracts because they knew their name, image, and likeness was going to be very big. Well, unless you're a player that's coming into the WNBA, because I think this contract works really good for rookies, right? Because for the rookies now who are coming in, well, you're not making $68,000, you're making $250. So now we got a lot more people who are coming in and want to play in the league now, because $250, you're starting to get up there. You play 3 leagues a year. I can come out of mid-level exception. By the time that comes out, the league grows a little bit, the numbers increase. Then I can go in there and I can actually make a little bit more money. Folks, I'm here to tell you there's players who just want to play in the WNBA. They're not trying to go overseas. They're not trying to go out there and be in other countries. They're not trying to leave their families. They're saying, look, I'm the sole supporter of my family. You give me $250,000, I can work that. You give me $460,000, I can work with that. I can make it better for my family. And at the same time, we need you to be ambassadors for the league. If you're calling our fans racist, if you're sitting here trying to convert players to go to other leagues, if you're sitting here that coming out and you want to be this, there's no WNBA owners buying that. And when the WNBA are not buying what you're selling, folks, in life, I'll tell you a lot of things, but in life there can only be really 3 objections to stop this. Okay, it's either going to be the price, the money, the salary you want. Okay, it's going to be you know. That really is the product's no good, or it's the individuals you're dealing with, which is Collier and Gumake, and the players union. You're running a unilateral front, but I don't think you've done the numbers, and I think Duluth has, and that's why you wanted Kathy Engelbert out. It had nothing to do with her leadership. She's just giving you the numbers, and Kathy keeps going back to the numbers, and you guys keep going back to some other party that you're trying to have. Well, this is not that type of party. Okay, this is like my grandson in Blade, Let It Rip. Folks, the numbers are the numbers. And unless you're sitting here with the jersey sales, then you need to sign that contract. Because at the end of the day, how I make my money as an owner has no business with how you make your money as a player. I repeat that. In the WNBA and the NBA, how I make my money as a player, right, has nothing to do with how I make my money as an owner, right? I'm in the business to make money, not to be your friend. Right? So you got to look at that and say the WNBA players are looking for friendship. These are owners who are putting their money up on putting money on the table to say, look, guys, this is what we're trying to do. Either you're with us or you're against us, because replacing you is not hard to do. Now let's talk about that, replacing you. I want to talk to you about a player named Yao Ming. Okay, came in, played for the Houston Rockets. Why do I want to talk to you about Yao Ming? The NBA and the WNBA can get any player they want. I repeat, they can get any player that they want. Doesn't have to be on U.S. soil. Really, and if you get too funky about it, you get real funky about it, we bring in a whole bunch of them, right? Because here's how the deal works. When Yao Ming wanted to come over and play in the NBA, it doesn't just work that Yao just decides, I'm going to leave my country. Because the grassroots of that country had been training Yao Ming in mating and dating and creating children and Chinese and building in players. And the Chinese have a tremendous grassroots program from dribbling, passing, shooting. You name it, they have it, right? So when Yao need to come over here and play in the NBA, the NBA had to go to the Chinese government, right? And they want to negotiate the salary. And I think at the time, the first thing they wanted, right, was 50% of the money, right, that he's going to make. 50% of that comes to us, period. Okay, that's the end of the story, David Stern, right? And Dave's got to make this deal because Yao Ming's a big present. And he brought in fans. They brought in fans who brought jerseys. Okay, so you could, before there was CaitlinClark, I can go on and tell you several players that came in, changed the game of the league. Okay, and they brought in fans and they brought in jersey sales and they really made this league what it is. But now, the women never seen that. Okay, so now you're negotiating from something you've never seen or you've never done, right? And for the men, it's real simple, right? Because you only got like 450 players in the league and all of them are outstanding. Well, in the women, you want to know why college basketball has been so successful. Money Mike's going to break it down because you got to put your owner's hat on. And if you look at this correctly in college basketball, or women's college basketball, why is it so successful? I'm going to tell you why. It's because the women transition every 4 years. You got new players, right? And you look at the WNBA and why hasn't the WNBA grown and made more money? It doesn't transition players. You can't have players that have been in there of 150 players and you got 125 of them that have been here for 10 years, right? That doesn't work, right? Because the fans are looking at the same players, and then you go through an expansion draft. Now you go have the players put on another jersey, and then they go through another expansion draft. Now you want us to go out and put on another jersey. Well, nobody's buying that anymore, right? Because the business model doesn't work. The business model doesn't work. You have to draft a player. You have to cultivate a player like Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson. You bring them all in, and you keep them together, and they grow together. Right? And then people buy one jersey, you buy Steph's jersey, it's the same jersey, right? You don't have to go to another team, you don't have to change your number, you're doing all these things to try to make and generate revenue, right? So I'm saying this because you've got two different forms of business that you're doing, and the NBA players, the way they operate, I mean, everybody can't get a max. Everybody's not going to get a max, and the team doesn't offer you a max. Well, you got those mid-level exception players, go make your $2 million. And you got coaches, go pay them $5 million because the WNBA are billionaires and they're not going to fold, okay? What they're doing is playing poker and they're pushing the chips all in. The only difference between the WNBA players, WNBA Players Association, the NBA owners, I'll make it simple to you. The NBA owners can go all in and buy more chips. The WNBA Players Association can't go all in because now what you're dealing with, and I don't think people understand it, you're dealing with players with jobs. Because once you open the floodgates, I guarantee you, folks, if you had 150 players that played in the WNBA this year, you can replace a good 125 of them. Easy. Not as hard as you think. They're not showing you because they haven't been to scouting. There's no grassroots. The other countries out there have been doing grassroots for years. There's no grassroots here, right? And you haven't seen all the talent. What you've seen is the players who make the tournament every year. Those are players they go draft. And then if you can get past that stage and make a WNBA team, because the WNBA players have cut a lot of players that should have been in the WNBA. That's going to stop, right? And they're not. If you look at the current rosters, here's where Money Mike is going with this, and I want you to understand this. If you look at the current roster of the WNBA players today, and you were paying these contracts, how many players would still be on your roster? How many players wouldn't be on your roster? It's like saying, okay, the New York Liberty, who's going to make the most money on a team? Because everybody now is going to want a multi-year contract, right? Because you got Sophia Cunningham. And I ain't mad at Sophie because Sophie's like, I want a little house on the prairie, right? I want to be paid, and I'm not talking about all the money in the world, but I just want a multi-year deal. I can pay for my house, and I'm good, right? So, but you got other players who are coming in now. They're like, I ain't playing for that, right? Think about that, folks. You got these college draft, Flo J. Johnson, woo, goodness, all right. I mean, you're talking about players now who really can defend. I mean, you're talking about players now coming in with a band already, and they're looking for a bigger bag than 850 because they're already getting that bag. So now they put that bag with the NBA bag and let me use the NBA platform, and what can I do with that? And this is the real question for all the rookies that are coming in. How do I get to $5 million a year? For the agents, man, if you're managing a player now, and here's an example, right? I take a player like Malaysia Fulwiley, right? Malaysia Fulwiley, right? Malaysia Fulwiley is a great player. First, for Malaysia Fulwiley, Money Mike, there's only one thing I change with you. I need you 94 feet, pick them up. If I got Malaysia Fulwiley, this is how player management works, folks. You take a player who was with Don, who's Don suspending players. Don's going to keep suspending players. Nobody's buying into what Don's talking about no more. They're going to get worse and worse for her, right? Because Don's going to have to come to the WNBA because somebody's going to be buying what Don's saying anymore. You're paying these players money now. But you get Malaysia Fulwiley, who goes over there and goes to LSU, right? Kim Mulkey's a whole nother bargaining chip at the table, right? I mean, Kim Mulkey had missed the national anthem and caused a ruckus down there in LSU. But then you got Stephen A. Smith, who brings up the racial tone or the race card, talking about Ole Miss and the SEC, and starting another barn fire, right? Because people doing this racist stuff, and that's why Stephen A. is going to be out at ESPN. The whole crew's going to be gone. They're going to bring a new crew in. They're going to bring people in now that you're starting to see who can speak for the WNBA and their professionals, right? And they're moving their cast forward. Because why? Because Disney is the employer of ESPN, and I told you it takes one. I always told you guys, I said, guys, it takes one person to get you off, one shareholder. Well, it was Serena Williams' husband. Showed up and told Stephen A., you know what, you need to stay in your lane, buddy. And at the end of the day, he's got their ear, and he said, you know what, it's time to get rid of this guy, right? Because he's not helping us build a business. And he's building his own business, but his own business is going to fail because he's going to lose the ESPN platform. And once he loses the ESPN platform, they're going downhill. Once these WNBA players right now, I give you 24, 36 months, once they lose the WNBA platform, you're never going to see them again, right? So that's where the WNBA owners, when you put your hat on, and folks, I tell people all the time, sometimes you can go out there and you can buy a ticket to a game. You can say, okay, I'm spending. Sometimes you can buy a season ticket, right? If you're going to buy a season ticket, you might as well buy the whole franchise. Because at the end of the day, the franchise is here to make the season ticket holders happy, right? And if they're not happy, they're not going to buy season tickets. So the players in the WNBA are going to Project B. You got the fans are not happy with them, right? And they're not buying their tickets anymore. So what are we really negotiating? Because you're not negotiating for the players who are coming, because they really don't need your help. They can do that themselves, right? That's why you need a new union, because these players here are already twice as smart as the players been playing in this league, right? And really, at the end of the day, it's going to be a union buster or whatever you want to call it, because the Las Vegas Aces ain't keeping all the Las Vegas Aces unless you're going to just say how many max contracts can Becky Hammond have, because you're only going to play 5 players max contracts. And if the WNBA is willing to allow the owners to do that, then you need to open the books. But they're really trying to close the books because they know they can make $5 billion in 1 year. They're not stupid. They can make $10 billion. In fact, if you look at it, the WNBA owners are trying to make about $30 billion profit a year. $1 billion ain't enough for them. $1 billion is not going to get them out of bed to try to come in here and pay attention to what's going on. And the amount of money you're spending is not going to get us out of bed, right? So you got to understand that for players. And the union has lost its footing in negotiation, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it, right? I mean, you cry to whoever you want. The owners have took the number public. Pretty soon they're like, take it or leave it. Maybe there's a couple 100,000 in there. I don't know. But at the end of the day, I think they've lost control. I think they didn't do their due diligence. I think Kathy Engelberg, who's wrote the valuation of the league, of how much money the league makes, her firm keeps the books, and this one made no sense. You want to fire Kathy, the person who's keeping the books, and who really you're negotiating against Kathy's numbers is really what you're doing. And the only way you can negotiate against Kathy's numbers Okay, Money Mike let it rip. You better bring some firm in there with your numbers, and that's the dispute you have. They don't need to show you the books because you should know their business better than they do, right? And at the end of the day, they should show you the numbers. Folks, this is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. You got a CBA, you got an OK Corral, you got a standoff, and Wyatt Earp's going to win, right? CaitlinClark's like Wyatt Earp. If you ain't with us, then you ain't with us. Okay, then you get out of the way so we can bring in somebody else that will be with us, because it doesn't matter how good of your talent you is. Talent means nothing, right? And it's not the WNBA, folks. I'll tell you, any podcaster out there, Money Mike gonna make it easy. If you think in your mind delusionalness can hit everybody, that the WNBA is gonna disappear, if you think the WNBA is gone, it's going to fold, have you lost your mind? What do you think, you're playing with kids? These guys got enough poker chips to last for the next 50 years, right? They don't have a problem. They'll just outlast you. And after a while, people are going to burn through a lot of money trying to defend or beat the WNBA. You're going to burn through a lot of money. Because the WNBA says, look, I pay these players. I can give you $5 million. But once I give you $5 million, ain't no else going nowhere else. No. And let me tell you why that is, because the NFL's got an old rule out there, folks. They got an old time rule. In the NFL, I'm going to tell you what about paying players. The NFL has a rule that says, look, with you and certain players in the NFL who are out of control, if we give you money, we're going to get you more out of control. That's what they meant by Antonio Brown, right? Antonio Brown was a competitor, but he just say he got out of control. There's a lot of players in the NFL can make a whole lot more money, but they gave you that money, you'd be out of control. And that's what's happening now. The WNBA owners say, we gave you guys more money, you're going to be more out of control what you are. And I can tell you, Ed Whitaker, when the Southwestern Bell came in and bought Pac Bell, and they said, well, Pac Bell's a great company. They just don't sell anything. We sell things over here. And when they came on in, it is what it is. You either adapt or die. This is the Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. We're chilling back. Boy, I can go longer with a nice warm fire behind me. You stay tuned. It's OK Corral, folks. And it's a no-limit poker game. And the players and the owners are going at it. But the bottom line is the owners can buy in again. They can push all their chips in every hand. Every hand they're going to get you all in. And pretty soon you don't have any more poker chips. And they can buy them. So that's the name of the game. They can go buy what they need. You can't. So I'd take the deal. And really my question to Adam Silver and Kathy Ingeberg, whoever's next commissioner, I don't get my player to $5 million. Like my lazy for Liley, I'm just like, man, come on in this league, market, let's get you marketed into this league. Because my lazy for Wiley is not a player. And I'll be the first to tell you, it's not a player that's going to be the conducive one to the college system. But in the pro system, my lazy for Wiley, with proper management, which she's getting now, you come in this WNBA, man, they're already saying she's a video game. Nobody's going to understand that, how to market and manage a player like that, because you got to get them out of that mode that's sitting there trying to run an offense and just let the player play, and the fans will pay money to see her. How much money the fans going to pay to see Guma K. Cowher, Alyssa Thomas? You got to put a cap on it. Because at the end of the day, if they're not paying money to see you play, right? And this is the funny thing about this whole negotiation. You know what's going down here? You guys are negotiating on the rookies' work. They haven't done the work. The rookies have done the work and got the viewership up. If you look at who they're trying to see, man, they're trying to see these young players, not the old players. And I think that's where everybody's got a little confusion in the kitchen, where they're thinking it's the old players everybody's coming to see, but they're not. Folks, this is Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast. They've come out and said the money is a hoax. It's not real. The money is real, okay? And at the end of the day, I think you're out of gas. I don't think you're not going to get our revenue sharing because you're not paying the cost of the talent that we have to pay for operations to go out there and get the talent to make us the money. And you're not a part of that. You're not a part of that process. And good luck with that, I'll tell you that. Folks, I went way over today, but after I looked at it, I sat back a couple days. I said, this is ridiculous. Money Mike Syndicated Radio Podcast, we let it rip a little bit. It's an open mic. All things are possible to those who believe. And you know what? I mean, you got to look at it in the right way. Mellow Yellow, you know what? I'll close with you. They are poor representation of the WNBA Players Association. Is a lack of information they're willing to share with the public, and they're selfishly negotiating without thinking about what's going to happen when the college players, where are they going to go if there's no WNBA? And some of these grow up with a dream of playing in the WNBA. You guys are just doing this for yourself. That's the fans. And that's really coming from Mellow Yellow. And I'm going to come back to you next. I'll come back with the fans and we'll read off some stuff. But folks, the fans are saying, you're really drowning out the kids that are coming who are innocent, right? The kids who are coming behind do not have the same thing. They're coming off of financial wealth of universities, educated in business, because you have to be now. And now they're saying, we can walk in this league. We can help you, WNBA. That's the difference. The older players are what they're due, but the younger players are screaming, WNBA, we can help you grow. And if a player or younger players can help you grow, you need new life, folks, because of college basketball, the reason it's successful, it turns over every 4 years. It turns over every 4 years. You got 4 new years of players who are coming in the fans can fall in love with. Really, the average WNBA career, I really would tell you this, unless you're outstanding, should be about 4 to 5 years. You play 4 to 5 years, 6 years, you get a pension, you move on in life. And that's how it works, folks. Your knees are going to get bad when you get older, whatever hip, ankle problems you have, that's going to be a part of it. But it's not here for you to stay 20 years and play basketball. And I think that's what has happened. Folks, I went way over the time, but for all of you, man, I appreciate you, love you. Life is what it is. I stand 100% behind what I say. I'm a CaitlinClark fan, and at the end of the day, but I got to also get out of the fan mode and be objective and tell you, CaitlinClark, the blueprint works. Either you're with it or you're not. If you're not, you got to find somewhere else to play.